I think as a leader, just being a nice guy isn't enough to inspire people. You've got to challenge them a bit as well.
What makes the best leaders truly extraordinary, and what makes the worst ones fail? Well, today I'm joined by Andy Bird, leadership consultant, author, and trusted advisor to some of the most successful leaders and organizations.
We got our team in a room and we said, look, if we were going to be a brilliant company to work for, what would we need to sort of tick the box on? And we ended up with 10 criteria. We were the top company to work for in the UK on the Sunday Times Best 100.
The worst leaders, this is what they do.
They spread fear, don't they, I think?
We uncover the exact process for inspiring others and why friendship and connection are essential for building high-performing teams. Andy shares insights from over 35 years of experience, and now he's here to help you unlock your own leadership potential.
As a leader, if you can demonstrate your heart is genuine in the right place, then people trust you, then the responsibility shifts a bit. The people that did best in COVID and were most inspiring to their teams were people that heard and embraced the difficulty. In some cases, people were dying.
This episode is sponsored by YouMore, enriching your journey through content. Let's do this.
So it's about purpose, partnership and performance. Those are the 3 P's of leadership.
ActionCOACH, the help you need to grow your business. Andy Bird, leadership expert. What is leadership?
Less of the expert. I'm still learning.
we're all learning. We're all still learning. To
what
me, you're the expert.
Let's see how we get on.
All right.
No, love it. So leadership. There's such a challenge when you start out in a career.
Yeah.
We all start at a junior level. We're operating, we're doing stuff, getting stuff done, trying to get it done on time, good quality. You get good at it. You get promoted to become a manager. You get a bit of people responsibility, but essentially it's the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You get good at that and you get promoted to being a leader. And quite often we don't get explained what that means. And it's a step change. It's a completely different ballgame. And often people stay grounded in their operating and managing, and they don't think about what it means to really become a leader and go through that kind of bit of a transformation really in many ways. And so the question you're asking about, what is leadership, is one that I think people need to think hard about. And my answer to it, I boiled it down very simply into 3 Ps. I think if you're going to be leading something, whatever it might be, maybe a company, might be a community, might be a team, you've got to work out what you're leading for. What is it you're trying to lead to make happen in the future? Something you're trying to bring about, some change. Yeah. You've got to be clear about that and how you're going to go about it.
Is that one of the Ps?
It's one of the Ps. It's purpose.
Purpose. Right, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So you've got to get your purpose clear. And if you're going to lead, you've got to bring people with you. So the second P is partnership.
Oh, I thought it was going to be people, but...
No, partnership.
Yeah.
It's more than just people. It's bringing a spirit of partnership and connection with people. And that's partly about the spirit of it. It's partly about the sort of rapport you have with them, the engagement, but it's also about the clarity of who's doing what and the roles and responsibilities and the structures and stuff like that. And then there's no good in any of that unless you've got the performance. You actually got to deliver something at the end. So it's about purpose, partnership and performance. Those are the 3 Ps of leadership for me.
In that order?
Well, good question.
Probably.
There is a kind of order to them, but actually I think they're quite illustrative.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, some transformational, heroic leaders will be thinking, right, I've got the vision, I've got the purpose, and now I'm going to bring everybody on board. But often, I could tell a story about this actually. Often that's not the way to do it. If you want to build partnership, what better way than to build partnership than try and create a sense of co-ownership for the purpose in the first place and involve people in that.
Tell us
so there's some iteration around that.
Tell
the story. So I learned a lot of this stuff. I had a wonderful guy called Steve Radcliffe who taught me a lot about leadership. He was a coach I had a while back. And I set up my own business and we recruited some great people. Some leaders were emerging from within the team. And we created an executive team, a leadership team, a board. And I was thinking, well, I want to engage these people. I want to build that partnership bit. So I was really nice to them. We talked about their salaries. We tried to give them nice roles. And it just wasn't quite working. Yeah, it was just something missing. Some spirit was missing. And I'll never forget something Steve said to me. He said, tell you the problem, Andy. You're trying to engage them in your purpose. It's not their purpose. And that's that thing about co-creation. And the big breakthrough we had as a team was going out for a couple of days and we talked about why the hell we're here. These guys had left to join they left big companies. They joined a small company, a startup, taken a big risk. So why the hell have you done it? What's in it for you? What do you care about? Why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
What does success look like to you? And if we kind of all combine that and get a sense of that together, what we're trying to do here, then suddenly it becomes really exciting for all of us. And when I look back on it, the thing that in some ways surprises me, and I'm proud of actually, is they outlasted me. They were there longer than me, those guys. So
was that a tipping point?
It was a tipping point.
All right. So was it in the formation of the leadership team when you got to that? It's almost like Stephen Covey, isn't it? The key to commitment is involvement. When you got to that co-creation, exactly, and you changed that, and now you involved them on a completely new level.
Yeah.
Was it actually a tipping point for further growth in the business?
It was absolutely that. Because, so I set up the business with my business partner, Mari, and these guys had emerged as leaders within the business. And I think, I'm sure you'll have similar experiences, but there tend to be certain points when structures change and, you get the need for more levels. And if you can get to the point where you get serious leaders, I say beneath you, but I'd say actually alongside you, beginning to sort of, you exponentially begin to grow the business rather than it all being down to you and your leadership of others.
Yeah.
And so it was a serious tipping point, made a huge difference. And we had another one a little later when we were more like 80 to 100 people, when there was a new level of executive coming through. Yeah. And we went through another round.
A management level.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting, isn't it? Because exponential growth started to happen after co-creation, and it used to be like almost between that 40 and 50 employees mark.
Yeah.
We've now got a functioning leadership team type thing, and slightly less now because of technology. You don't quite need as many people.
That's right.
32 is what someone sat in your seat has shared recently, and there was some substance behind what he'd said. Actually, he'd studied this around the world. Daniel Priestley's wrote a lot of books in this area. So 32 is that number.
Bit of a step change takes place.
But he says actually you could have some businesses, especially in technology, that they can have exponential growth and only have, there could be 100 million turnover business with 12 employees.
No, exactly. I mean, so we used to laugh. We did a while back, we did a partnership thing with Google, and we'd been going about 10, 15 years. And we actually founded the same year as Google. And we realised they were a bit bigger than us by that stage. They're absolutely enormous. So I think the tech business is a different ball game when you get that. But our business was a consultancy business. So it's very people-based.
Yeah.
So it's...
was it around that 40 to 50 mark where you had that emergence?
It was earlier. I mean, it was somewhere probably between 20 and 30, so not far off 32. We found... I think in the consultancy world, we found there's something around, I would have said more about 20 to 25, but there or thereabouts, isn't it, with 30. And then there's something around 80 to 100.
What happened to 80 to 100 then?
Well, it's a similar thing. There's only so much bandwidth that a leadership team of 6 or so can have. Yeah. And then they find they've got guys emerging and growing and looking for development and leading clients and so on.
Did you start to establish almost a bit of a leadership team in divisions of the business, in departments?
Yeah. We had, that's right. It sort of began to sort of expand at that level sort of incrementally. But we also began to open an office in the States, we opened an office in Singapore, which is another challenge as well. And it's very exciting, but there was the wonderful, again, my old mate Steve, I'll never forget, at that second stage, we had our very well-established Team 6 that had grown really, really strong relationships as a gang. And the new group coming through were brilliant, but we just didn't have quite that same rapport and level of aligned spirit. And I remember Steve running a session for us, and he started the session by saying, so, to what extent are you guys feeling like you're up to something together? And it just hit the nail on the head because, well, we don't actually. We're all at different stages on that journey.
Take someone from the outside asking that question.
It's brilliant. It's a great question. And I to the guys listening or watching this, when you think about your leadership team, to what extent are you up to something together? Great question.
To what extent are you up to something together?
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Umore, a video agency across the UK that helps you build great relationships with your customers through video. And we believe there is no better way to help build relationships, earn trust, and enrich the journey your customer goes on than leveraging video in your business. Get in touch with them today to start your adventure with video. Now back to the podcast.
Is there a shared sense of purpose in this room?
How did you take that?
At the time, I shifted uncomfortably in my seat.
As we do.
As did everybody.
Yeah, well,
no, but it's brilliant because it forces you to have the honest conversations. Because the thing is, in that situation, we'd had a situation where the guys that had been through that first phase together, we got a lot of history together, a lot of relationships are built up, and you can't get away from that. So we embraced that. But it was a case of, well, how do we move on to the next stage, and how do we respect and honour the new guys coming through and give them the space to have their own opportunities to lead and so on.
I like that. I like that little phrase that you just said there. It forces you to have the honest conversations. I mean, is there a difference between honest conversations and difficult conversations?
I think there probably is. You can have a difficult conversation and not be honest.
Okay, yeah. I think it's kind of a similar kind of thing, though, isn't it? Facing the tiger, and confronting the honesty it's challenging inside. Isn't it?
It is. There's something very powerful, I think, about as a leader. I think this is a general point, actually. That you have to. There's a sense of integrity and honesty to face up and accept the reality of what is actually happening. What is the reality here? And let's kind of embrace that. And then from there, we can then say, well, kind of where do we take this then? I think in times of crisis, it's really interesting in the COVID time. I remember reading and found this myself. By this stage, I was coaching people. I think the people that did best in COVID and were most inspiring to their teams were people that heard and embraced the difficulty of the challenge.
Yeah.
In some cases, we all know. In some cases, people were dying in the team. It was dreadful, So you can't just gloss it over and say everything's going to be all right. That's blind optimism. It's not helpful. You've got to face up to the situation and sort of recognise people's fears and embrace them to an extent. However, you then have to use the energy from that to then move forward and find something optimistic. So it's about realistic optimism at the heart of that, I think.
Blind optimism, you said. There's a denial about it, isn't there? It's almost like optimistic denial to a degree.
Yeah,
it's going to be all right.
It's Pollyanna attitude. It's like sort of just doesn't help anybody. No one trusts that.
Right at the start of that, though, you did say, look, there comes a time where you've got to face up and accept what is.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a look in the mirror yourself moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do the best leaders do that regularly?
Well, I think the best leaders do. The thing that's interesting, another thing that I believe in quite strongly, we've talked about a team. A team needs to do that. But if you're the leader of that team, my goodness, you've got to be able to do that yourself. Yeah, because if you're not doing it within yourself, then it's very difficult for you to handle that in a team environment. And crikey, I'm sounding like I've got all the answers.
Yeah.
When I was going through this, I'm not saying in any way that I did this well all the time, if ever, but I've learnt a lot from going through that.
Look, you've been studying, observing leadership for a very long time here. So I don't want to put a number on this, but if I say 2 or 3 or 4, I just mean less, if that makes sense. What are some of the things that the best leaders on the planet do?
Yeah.
And I don't, not a long list, just they do this, which is maybe face up and accept what is type thing. What else do they do?
Well, I think there's a quote by Peter Drucker, which I had a huge impact on me and I did a lot of research and wrote a book about it. He said the first and foremost job of any leader, as Peter Drucker is saying, well, this is interesting, what's he going to say? Is to take charge of their own energy and to orchestrate the energy of those around them. And so I think the management of energy is an incredibly important part of leadership. And we talked about purpose, partnership and performance. There's two ways of looking at it, two dimensions to that. There's things you need to do. So have you got a clear sense of purpose? Have you got strategy? Have you developed a sense of core values? In the partnership, are you building relationships with people? Are you clarifying the operating models and the structures? On the performance, are you doing all the stuff around measurement and all that stuff, coaching people so you don't have to deliver everything yourself? It's all doing. There's a whole dimension of being in that as well. So you've got to manage how you're being. And there's different energies that will take place in the 3 Ps. The being around purpose is about sort of visionary, inspiring. Partnership is about listening, engaging, being there for people.
Take charge of your own energy and become a conductor.
Yeah.
I got recommended this book by one of my coaches, Frank Dake, and it was called Maestro.
Right.
And it's about a conductor.
Yeah.
Of how he does control the energy of the team.
Yeah.
In blissful symphony. And it basically, as soon as you said that, I got a bit of goosebumps really over it. So, all right, that's one of the things they do. What else?
Well, it all kind of sits in there somewhere, sort of I'd say big. That's a big one.
yeah, it is.
I think there's something that is about really listening to people, and to the extent that they feel heard, and listened to,
and understood,
yeah. And you could also, to use a different sense, see people. I remember there was someone talked about Bill Clinton, his great strength as a leader. He said, see people, really see them. So listen to them, hear them, but see them.
See who they are.
See who they are.
Really
value them for who they are.
Yeah.
It's
got it. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I'm not probing for more. I mean,
no.
I'm just giving.
I give you a little illustration of this. Well, it's not a little illustration. It's a big illustration of it. Maybe a little story around it. It was a hugely important part of our success as a company. So one thing I remember going back a while. I remember soon after we started the company, reading in the magazine. We were a marketing consultancy, and I'm reading in the marketing press that we'd come something like 19th in a list of the best companies we work for in the marketing world. I was thinking, I thought two things. Firstly, 19 is not very good. And secondly, how the hell are we in this? Where's this come from? We should be sort of worrying about this stuff. And out of that came this thought that I'm only going to do this once probably. I'm only going to really set up a company once with Mari. I want to do it really well. I want to create a company that's a great place to work. I don't want to be 19th. I want to be a great place to work. And I wonder what that looks like. And around about the same time, I remember going to I used to run a lot of leadership stuff with marketeers, and there was at a time when Tesco were on fire. They were in fantastic form, doing brilliantly, growing like a train. And their marketing director came, did a talk at the thing I was running, and he said, it's not rocket science. Tesco, we've worked out there are 4 or 5 things that customers really want, and we designed the business around delivering them. And one of the things we realised is that in order to do that successfully, we've got to make sure the people in the business are engaged. So we've done the same internally. We've worked out there are 4 or 5 things that people in the business really want, and we try and deliver those. So it's an employee value proposition type thing. And I heard this, and I thought, why don't we do that for brand learning? I mean, Tesco's massive, and they came up with 5. Brand learning was tiny, and we came up with 10. So we made it more complicated. But we, again, co-creation, we got our team in a room. We said, look, if we were going to be a brilliant company to work for, what would we need to be? What would we need to sort of tick the box on? And we ended up with 10 criteria. And it was things like really practical things, like the office is a great place to come to work. But it was things like, I feel valued for who I am and what I bring. I feel supported throughout the business by the leaders. We called our leaders supporters, not line managers.
Yeah.
So we had these criteria, and we then basically launched what we call a happiness survey. We did it every 6 months, wasn't too often, and we got people to say, out of 5, how are we doing? And if it's what are we doing? And then there was one qualitative question: what are we doing well? And what would it take to score a 5? What would we need to change to score a 5? And it started at average, and the key thing was we really read those feedback. And early on, we began to we'd present it back, and we'd really acknowledge what we'd heard. And to begin with, there were quite a few things that Mara and I and the other leaders, I'll say their names, Naveen, Michelle, Jill and Anna, we realised there were certain things we could do that were quite easy. We invested some money in the office, sorted out some IT problems, we changed some things. There was one tricky one. We had a really bad car park, really practical stuff. And we claimed to be inclusive and flat structures, non-hierarchical. But some of the board lived a long way away, and it was really awkward to park. So we had board parking spaces. And some of the feedback was, you say you're kind of, non-hierarchical. How come there's board parking spaces? So he said, yeah, good point. We've stopped that. And then people go, wow, they're actually doing something about this. And after a little while, it shifted, and they knew that we were...
Trust.
They knew that we were doing our best. They also knew we couldn't do everything. And gradually it shared out, and there was stuff about, support for each other that was way beyond just what the leaders did. Everybody needed to do that, on how we look after the office spaces and stuff like that. So we were all in this together. So actually, if we want to create a great company to work, we've all got to be in it.
Yeah. So
suddenly it becomes shared again. So that was, I think, the point about that. So I'll tell you it's a long story. The point about that is that as a leader, if you can demonstrate that you're really listening and you want to do something about it, your heart is genuine in the right place, then people trust you, and then the responsibility shifts a bit, and then you can involve them in doing that and helping, rather than sort of just pointing at you all the time and calling you out.
I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, the story is listening and changing and developing, and actions speak louder than words type thing. Even before that, though, you did say something which reminded me of a Jim Collins classic.
Right.
Good is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
The best leaders, we're 19th on the list.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. How did we even get on this? And why are we that? And come on, let's develop a great business.
Yeah.
Let's go bigger.
So I should tell you, the thing I didn't say as well at the end of it was we were the top company to work for in the UK on the Sunday Times Best 100 in 2011, I think. So we got there. It was
it's pretty impressive. That
was we were really proud of that.
You were number one. You were number one in the businesses to work for in the UK.
Yeah, in the Sunday Times Top 100. So we got there, but we all we were all involved in that. I remember the first time we got onto that list a few years earlier, and gradually worked our way up it. But the whole company wanted to get the way up it, and there were different groups in the company, and we need to get everybody involved and feeling as committed as
interesting.
And that was a challenge.
Right, we're going to go the other way now.
Sorry,
and I don't want you to hold back on this. I don't want you to hold back on this.
You're making me go back into my past here.
Yeah, right. So nothing you can say can offend me or any of the listeners.
Yeah.
We are only here to learn. I want you to just list off the worst leaders. The worst leaders, this is what they do. We know the best leaders. They take charge of the energy and they become a conductor. They face up and accept what is. They really listen. They make people feel understood. They take action. Action speaks louder than words. They've got a good is the enemy of great mentality.
Yeah.
Like, look, if we're going to do it, let's really do it.
Yeah.
What do the worst leaders do?
They spread fear, don't they? I think they create fear. Ultimately, if you think of the most positive emotions as the sort of inspiration, excitement about the future, commitment to a purpose that people believe in. Whereas if you take that away and you make people scared of making mistakes, feeling bullied, threatened, and there's loads of businesses that are toxic like that, and I believe really strongly that that's a terrible. What a legacy to leave as a leader if you're leaving people feeling like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to touch on a couple of these points actually. How do you develop a culture where it's okay to make mistakes? I mean, how do you do that as a leader? What should we do?
I think there's a mindset stuff. I'm sure you've come across with Carol Dweck. People haven't come across that. Then there's a psychologist who says basically there are fundamentally two mindsets. One is a fixed mindset, which suggests that our underlying sense of ourselves and other people is that we are born with a certain level of capability, and life is one series of tests to prove whether we're good enough or not. And because of capabilities are fixed, you can succeed once, but you've still got to keep battling, and it's a grind. And every time you fail, it's proof that you're not good enough. Fairly miserable. If you have a learning mindset, a failure, instead of it being an opportunity to convince yourself you are actually crap and you didn't have the potential in the first place, instead it's like, this is an opportunity to grow.
I can learn anything.
I can learn from this. And next time I've had the same situation, maybe the results might be different.
Yeah, genius.
And that's at the heart of it.
Yeah, it is at the heart of it, and it's a big lesson for me. I'm literally taking notes here for my own development, by the way, because that is brilliant. How do you get a culture where it's all right to make mistakes? This is how you do it.
Yeah.
You get a culture of growth mindset.
Yeah. I think so.
You read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Yeah.
You work out how you're going to implement that kind of culture in your business, and you get everybody embracing this growth mindset.
Yeah.
And then guess what?
Yeah.
It's all right to make mistakes.
Yeah.
No one's fearful of them anymore. All right. So spreading fear.
Yeah.
This is quite common. I don't think most people do it intentionally. But maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe you can comment on that. How do we mitigate that? How do we stop, as a leader, of injecting fear in people?
Yeah. So there's a risk in what we're talking about now. It's beginning to sound simplistic, because fear can be good. I remember there's a thing about the All Blacks. It's the fear of letting down the jersey that makes them brilliant. We have fear. We're not going to get rid of fear.
Yeah.
The trick is to use fear in a positive way, channel it, and so it doesn't make us shrink and avoid things. We need to channel it to find resolve.
Yeah, I probably agree with this as well, actually, because I've studied the greats in sports as well, and like a Alex Ferguson type thing, a Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. I mean, you should always be a little bit scared of your boss, a little bit. Yeah, just not to the point where it's detrimental.
No, and different people have different levels of this. You've got to read people. Some people need more encouragement. Some people need more challenge. So
then, this is how you overcome fear. You know your people.
You've got to know your people.
And
it's a classic Alex Ferguson thing, isn't it?
You got to know your people, and you got to know what buttons to press, and you got to know how hard to press those buttons.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to press them too far, though, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's the only way of knowing how hard to press it.
Yeah.
By going too hard.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. Sometimes I think possibly there's a risk. You've got to judge that, haven't you? Here's another thing. Here's another really interesting thing. I'm not sure this makes it simple to understand this, but let's explore it.
Starting your own business was an exciting time, wasn't it? You knew you'd have to work hard, but you did it for your future. Lately, though, you're missing out on the important things in life. Time seems to be slipping by. So make the change. Claim back your work-life balance and grow your business today.
When I studied inspiration in people, when I talk to people about when have you felt most inspired, what inspires you, they often talk about people that have inspired them and role models and stuff like that. But one thing that surprised me was they often talked about terrible things they've been through and deeply challenging times when people come out the other side can be incredibly inspiring afterwards. We think of inspiring as a nice thing, but actually
it's a really good point, isn't it?
It can be difficult when it's actually happening. It's afterwards. The effect of it afterwards is the thing that's
when you see someone achieve something great, in the face of massive adversity, you're kind of overwhelmed by pride and respect for them, and it is inspirational, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't think, as a leader, it's interesting, isn't it? I think as a leader, just being a nice guy and being really sort of full of good values isn't enough to inspire people. You've got to challenge them a bit as well. You know, you've got to
and encourage them to keep facing that tiger and keep going for it. And
I mean, it's that whole thing about radical candor.
Yeah.
You know, it's that stuff, isn't it? With the balance of support and care for the person.
Yeah. Care personally, challenge directly.
Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of possibly a little bit of fear and a bit of trepidation in there, a bit of uncomfortable. Google talk about uncomfortable excitement. That's a great phrase.
Inject a little bit of uncomfortableness, dissatisfaction into the conversations. Just enough. Yeah. Just enough.
So I think going back, when I was talking about, I'll qualify what I said earlier, because I think what I think having a bit of fear and using fear in an organisation, fear of the outside, fear of, you know, that can be a positive thing to really motivate people and go for stuff and face challenge. It's a good thing. But what I think is unhelpful is when bullies threaten people and behave politically and manipulate people, and that's a different kind of...
We've not lost that yet. I mean, it used to be very, very common.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I wasn't in corporate organisations through the 90s into the 2000s. You'll know that more than I will. Well, did it used to be more common than it is now?
I think it probably did. I think we've become more aware of.
All right, but you're not convinced that it was that. Do you still think it's really common now?
I think it's common. I think some of the, people just, there's some people who focus. You know, I went through the purpose, partnership, and performance. Yeah. I think people just focus on performance, and they.
It's a trap, though, isn't it? Maybe if there's, let's just say, some of the listeners right now, they're being honest with themselves and saying, yes, that's me.
Yes.
What advice would you give to them?
So I think the fact you think they're behaving like this.
Yeah. So you've made a really point. Here's a trap. You keep focusing on performance.
Yeah.
This is not good.
Yeah.
You know, what's your advice?
So I think we as individuals, when we get into leadership positions, we underestimate the impact we have. A lot of the time, we're probably not even aware of it because of the ripples. And I think my first suggestion would be, hey, just have a think about this. Become more aware. What would you like your impact to be? What do you think it is currently? You'll be wrong because you can never know what your impact is. But genuinely trying to understand what your impact is beyond yourself is really important. And the problem with it is, if you've currently got a situation where you've created fear around you, people won't tell you. So there's something about genuinely looking to learn about your impact on others, opening the space so people can feel able to be honest with you. If going back to learning growth mindset, if you can really convince people that you want to find out how you come across and seek that feedback and learn from it and involve people in trying, because it's difficult. I mean, a lot of these things we don't do intentionally. We all have a shadow of some sort that comes across. But I think if you can involve people in some of that and be more open about it and show you're working at it, then that's so engaging with people. And people find that very inspiring. No. That people aren't looking for perfect kind of icons of, ideal humanity. That's not realistic. I think people opening up about some of their vulnerability and some of the things they're struggling with itself can be incredibly inspiring to people.
Yeah, and what we're talking about essentially is genuinely deep levels of engagement and inspiration.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the best leaders do, yeah?
Yeah.
How do you balance authenticity, personal growth, developing a new identity, becoming a little bit better and remaining authentic? And so when you're becoming better at an area that you're not as good at yet, you're not really being authentic, are you?
No, it's great. There's some lovely stuff.
How do you balance that on the journey to becoming an incredible leader?
Yeah, it's a great point, because there's the authenticity. There's always that balance between how you present yourself and how you feel inside, isn't there? And there's something about showing some vulnerability. Mm-hmm. But if you're a leader, you can't just suddenly say, "I've kind of lost all my confidence and I'm crap at this." And you've got to have
balance vulnerability with confidence.
It's got to be a balance. There's a phrase, I think one of the writers, it may even have been Collins or someone like that, I think, it's about robust vulnerability. So, and authenticity, you've got to be careful about the way you reveal yourself and expose yourself with people in a leadership position. And there is something about openness and honesty, but you have to read that carefully.
I think it's careful, and you got to consider your approach. There's got to be a methodology that you got to prepare.
Yeah.
I mean, how much time are top leaders putting into this? How much confidence to project, how authentic to be, how vulnerable, how much time are they putting into the preparation before they are communicating?
Yeah. Well, I think another thing so when I talked about that research about where people get inspiration from, people is a big one, challenges is a big one. The other big one is personal space. And what links to the point you're saying, I think leaders who struggle are really locked into operator manager mode all the time. They're just kind of doing stuff all the time. They're back-to-back meetings. They have no time to think. They have no time to step out, reflect, think about these things, think about themselves, ground themselves, get back in touch with their values, their personal sense of purpose, reflecting on how they're coming across, how they want to come across. And I think if you can, and I think coaching can play a hugely important part in that, helping people think that through. Yeah. But if you are doing that for yourself and keeping time aside to think about it quite deeply now and again, then I think it makes it much easier to manage it and sustain it all the time. So, any leader is going to be very busy, but if they carved out some of this time, if during a day that is a particularly busy one, they're flat out, you go into a meeting, a bunch of guys, the results are bad, you have a bit of a clash with someone over something, you're feeling a bit off kilter, you come out straight into the next meeting. I think the best leaders are able to say, hang on, time out, just reconnect, recalibrate, go in on a different basis. manage myself. I've been triggered. I'm not in a great place. Take a moment, go back in, reset. I think it's very difficult to do that if you're not spending a bit of time doing that offline yourself, and you've got some tactics for it. So I think it's a combination of the space to do it in depth, which then enables you to do it in the moment, in a much more agile way.
Space to do it in depth yourself and reflect and think. And then you've got to go off and implement that. But I love your 3 points, actually. Counterintuitively, inspiration comes from getting through a challenging situation, can come from the people around you, and it can come from personal space.
From within. The source of inspiration. We tend to think that inspiration comes from the outside. We think that I see a brilliant film, I feel inspired. Or I see a fabulous person I think is wonderful, I feel inspired. They're not inspiring. They're triggers for inspiration.
Yeah, it's
There's
a
nothing
choice.
inherent in those people, those situations that are inspiring. It's what it touches in us.
Yeah.
And the things inside us that they touch are our values.
Yeah.
And if we can be more aware of those things and be in touch with them and have that sort of sense of being grounded in them, then rather than waiting for the inspiration to come from the outside and thinking, I hope one day I might get inspired if I encounter something that might inspire me, our lives can be inspired because we can be in touch with those intrinsic motivations. And the things that really matter are our values, the things we enjoy and love doing, and the things we're good at, our passions and strengths and our values. If we can be in touch with those things, we lead inspired lives rather than just occasionally get inspired once in a while.
I interviewed the world #1 body language expert. Yeah? There you go. He's called Mark.
I bet they behave well.
Oh,
That's right.
he was unbelievable, really. I mean, but he did say in all of this, he talked about leadership in a little bit of a way, but he said actually inspiration means this: to inspire.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and inspiration means an expansion of. It means a connectedness within, the values. But you can't be inspired. You can't ever be inspired if you're contracted.
No.
Because that's the opposite. To inspire is, and it's creating more space, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
well, breathe. I love. I love that. So exactly right. Breathing in air.
Yeah.
It gives us life. I think that when we talk about inspiration,
it's a good point, that, isn't it? Just like I just want to just respect and digest the point that breathing in air gives you life as a leader.
Yeah.
Take that moment of personal space. That's
now where do we the equivalent to our spirit? How do we breathe into our spirit? Well, it comes from being in touch with the things we care about. And if you're not thinking about that, you
the things that matter most,
the things
the
that matter most to
important
you.
stuff.
Yeah, and just remembering that. And
the best leaders on the planet,
they're
in touch with the important stuff.
Yeah.
They know what matters most.
Yeah,
they're connected to the spirit.
Yeah, and the job of inspiring other people isn't then me having done that and say, let me tell you what I think you should find inspiring. Here's my values. The way to do it is let other people get in touch with that for themselves, which is exactly what happened with the team that I talked about. It wasn't me and Mari trying to convince them about our values and our purpose. It was letting them think about what they worried about and cared about and how it connected to what we were all trying to do together. So that's how you, I think, encourage inspiration in a team. We think we've got to inspire other people. In a way, it's more about creating the environment so they can get in touch with that stuff for themselves.
Hi, I am Rachel Riley, and I'm really pleased to tell you that I will be the host of BizX 2025. 3 days of speaker sessions, interactive events, and a few surprises along the way.
If you're an ambitious business owner eager to unlock the next level of growth, get more information at thebizx.co.uk.
Looking forward to seeing you there.
Shape the environment so that they can get in touch with their own spirit.
Yeah.
What lesson in leadership took you the longest to learn?
I think there are, when we talk about our behaviours, we have beliefs about ourselves that are ingrained from way back, from when we're kids. And there are fears or worries. We have limiting beliefs. And when they are triggered, we behave in ways that we wouldn't like to, really, and that have a negative impact. And they're often self-reinforcing, because we behave like that. We have a fear, makes us behave in a certain way, and people treat us in the way that then creates the fear.
Told you that would happen.
Yeah, it's sort of, and I'm still really working hard at that. We all are. It's so hard. There are fears I have, and I know my behaviour is. I can be my colleagues have said to me in the past, I can be inflexible about stuff. If they're listening now, they'll be smiling to me say it. I know I can be inflexible at times, and I can get.
So, are you saying that the lesson is resisting?
I think you resist.
Resisting limiting beliefs, previous experiences, cognitive biases. Resisting that's the hardest lesson to learn.
Yeah. And there's something about really deeply accepting who you are.
Acceptance, yeah.
Again, yeah. And it comes back to where it's full circle, isn't it?
But that could actually be for some people right now. They could, because you really eloquently described the worst leaders. I'm a big believer. We learn more from mistakes than success.
Yes,
we can still learn and get a lot from success, but the biggest mistakes teach you the most if you acknowledge them. So, accepting. Oh my God, am I injecting fear in people? That's a tough lesson. Yeah.
Well, it's a tough lesson, but I tell you the tougher lesson, which is more the level I'm getting to. They might not be too worried about it. They might be quite glad about that, because it's a defence. And the really difficult lesson is to accept why, in themselves, it's causing them to behave in the way that. Do you see what I mean?
That's the biggest lesson, though, isn't it? What's the? Let's just let me try and ask you this question, and put you on the spot with it. What's the biggest leadership mistake you ever made?
What comes to mind? I'm not thinking of something that thinks, shit, I wish I hadn't done that. I think what I learned was that in my business, I feel like it's a therapy session. This, I began to realise that the bigger we got, the less equipped I was to perform and succeed in it.
So, what we're saying there, the biggest mistake is not developing yourself, not growing yourself.
Yeah.
The company was outgrowing you.
Yeah.
For example, why did you make that mistake? I'm only doing your
thing. Yeah.
Why did you make that mistake?
Well, I held on, and I found it difficult towards the back end of my time in the business. And I had a fantastic partner, Mara, who listened and heard, and the team around me. And so I began to shift, and I got more in touch with this stuff. I was interested why this was happening to me. I became more interested in coaching and leadership and spirit, because I was struggling, to be honest, at the time with being in touch with that for myself and understanding how that was working in my leadership. So I began to move away from leading the company as it got bigger and ploughed a different furrow. And I think it's interesting for people listening who are running startups. I think you've got to be a pretty special human being to be able to start something up as a founder. And I mean, some of these guys who've built like the mega business like Google and stuff, people who've gone all the way through that, hats off to that. That's incredible. Because I think a lot of us, and I'm one of them, I see myself as probably better in the small stage.
Yeah.
And there are other people I think who've been much better in the big stage, and they're better able to handle that sort of big unwieldy organisations, completely different ballgame. And I sort of began to realise that wasn't really my scene. I wasn't at my best in that environment.
Right.
So I took the decision to step away.
Got it. I'm really pleased that you shared that example. I can relate to it as well, and I think it's very common. Your self-development, you took the foot off the gas with your self-development, and the company began to outgrow you. And why do people make that mistake? Why would I make that mistake? The first place I'm going is comfort.
Yeah.
It's like, and just answering the questions that you posed there, for me to answer them honestly and face up to it and accept it.
Yeah.
Your words.
Yes.
That changes me. It's like being too comfortable. Come on, you got to get it. You've got to start developing yourself. Get back on that journey.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to keep on that self-development journey, is it?
No, it's not. I think the most difficult thing to do is to come to accept the thing that's wonderful, and this is where the learning comes in. When you realise the things that inhibit you, and when you see them as problems and things to be afraid of, then they do limit you and they have you in their grip. But actually, they are things that they make you who you are, and in some ways, they can be a real source of strength too. And if you begin to embrace them and help, begin to channel them, again, this channeling of fear rather than, I think that can be quite enabling. But you have to face up to it, and it's not easy.
Got a few quick questions for you now.
Yeah.
What's the most beautiful thing in leadership?
I think for me, it comes back to this spirit. It's wonderful. Last night we had a reunion of some of the team. We had about 30 or 40 of us. Still going. The company's disbanded now. It became part of Accenture, and some of them are still going strong. Many of them have left. We came back, and it's like yesterday. I mean, it was just everybody's there. It was wonderful to see everybody, and that spirit, that connection, that harmony. For me, that's a wonderful thing to have been able to enjoy.
That's a really good answer as well, isn't it? I mean, it's not relationships, it's friendships.
Friendships and
It's
about the engagement. I think that to me is a wonderful thing. I also think it's wonderful to have some achievements, and to look back and with pride about having won what great client things and awards and the best company and things like that.
Number one business to work for.
You feel achievement makes us, feel fulfilled and feel like you've made an impact and stuff like that. So that's some good stuff as well. Trouble with achievement, sometimes it can be fleeting, whereas the relationships tend to be longer term. What's
the best gift a leader can give anyone?
Best gift they can give anybody? I think it's to help them. I believe for people to be really fulfilled in life, it's a simple phrase I use, to find a way in their life to do the things they enjoy, that they're good at, and that they believe in. And I think if you're a great leader, you find ways to enable other people to find for themselves ways to do things they are good at, that they enjoy and they believe in. If you can find that for yourself, you help other people find that. That's what it's about for me.
It's really powerful. I'm going to listen back to this interview and with my notebook. I mean, I've got notes, but I need to pay attention to this stuff. What are the three best books on leadership in your opinion?
Well, top of the pile for me is I've taught Steve Radcliffe. He made a huge impact on me. His book, Leadership Plain and Simple.
Yeah.
He's from Wigan. Where are you from?
I'm West Yorkshire, so
okay,
he's
not that far. He sounds a bit like you.
Yeah.
He's got the same accent.
Leadership Made Simple.
Leadership Plain and Simple. What fabulous book. Very short, very simple. He talks about future, engage, deliver. I translated that a bit to purpose, partnership, and performance, but it's the same stuff. Yeah. I think that's a brilliant book. I think that would be my number one book. I think there's a great book around the 5 Levels of Leadership.
Yeah.
That's
Collins.
Collins.
Yeah.
That's a great book.
Good to great.
Good to great, all that stuff. I mean, those are probably the ones I'd single out, actually.
And your own book, of course.
And of course, the third has to be number 3.
Yeah. And
yeah, The Inspired Leader.
The Inspired Leader.
Yeah, and it's about how you find that. I think there's loads of books about how people ought to and how they can inspire other people. Very few books about how you find inspiration for yourself.
And now the listeners have listened to this podcast, what's the first action they should take?
Well, it goes back to what I've just said. Are they clear about what they enjoy, what they're good at, and what they believe in? Are they clear about it?
Get clear on that.
And are they doing it?
Get clear on that and then do it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
My favourite part of this discussion, I've absolutely loved this. In depth, big time, around this subject of leadership. And we've got so much substance here. My favourite part was the inspire part, and how you said, actually, believe it or not, a lot of it comes from going through something tough and achieving at the end of it. And then, I also liked it about acknowledging why you've made a mistake. That why, you answer that, that's going to turn you into a great leader. What's been your favourite part?
My favourite part of the conversation, I love talking about this stuff. It's been lovely reflecting on some of the experiences I had running the company. I don't think about that too much anymore. I've enjoyed that. But I felt vulnerable, actually. When you were asking about my mistakes, and hey, it's tough. I'm still.
Is that your favourite part?
No, that was not my favourite part. That was my worst part. I felt vulnerable there. I probably came across, but that's fine.
No, it didn't come across.
Shouldn't
It didn't come across. What came across is a genuine expert in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry for pressing them, but I'm kind of not sorry.
No, good. It's good.
But I get your point.
You've got to go there. You've got to go there.
You do have to.
You have
go
to
there.
explore that stuff.
So what's been your favourite bit then?
My favourite bit, I think it would be. I love chatting about it. I think it's reflecting back on the joy of having that leadership experience of my own business. That journey was amazing.
Gratitude for having the leadership experience. Yeah. And as we're grateful to sharing this experience with the leader of the #1 business in the Sunday Times top 100 business to work for.
We were leading it together. There's a crowd of us doing it. Yeah. I was one of them.
There you go. Andy Bird.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.